Talking college sports in the Deep South where college football is king. We want to think that the SEC conference is one of the better conferences in college football. Ladies and gentlemen, 64 NFL draft picks from this year, also countless national championships and a few Heisman Trophy winners along the way. Usually the SEC is always in the conversation in the college football playoffs. It just is what it is. Also, the SEC West is one of the more competitive sub-conferences, a lot of interconnecting rivalries, and the fan bases absolutely hate one another. Once again, it's K-Sue the GOAT for Vernon Speak Sports. We're talking Auburn football like nobody's business. In East Alabama, where Auburn University rests, they call that place the loveliest village on the plains, where the battle cry is a resounding War Eagle. Now, let's go ahead and get into the comment section. Also, let's get this. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel, Vernon Speak Sports Auburn, and like or unlike whatever you choose to do. A lot of great information in the comment section. So, as it turns out, of course, after the spring game, you knew they were going to bait the fan bases of the SEC and come out with a post-spring power ranking. I think that's okay, but then when you look at it, there's really not enough information, I think, from the spring games to even come up with a list like this. But you got to give the fans something to ride on until opening kickoff this fall, because we're constantly looking for content on our respective teams. But I actually dissected the list, and I was kind of intrigued by where, certain teams were placed, and I think the list was fairly accurate. When you go from number one all the way down, of course, Alabama's going to be number one, Georgia number two, LSU number three, Florida number four, of course, Texas A&M. I'm a little iffy on Texas A&M. I think they're going to be a good team, but they're going to be a good team, but a very, very good team next year. I think Jimbo Fisher's doing an incredible job of recruiting. Got Auburn at number 6. Mississippi State at number 7. Tennessee at number 8. Mizzou at number 9. And then you got South Carolina at number 10. I'm going to stop there just for the interest of saving time. Now, the top 4, is pretty predictable. I figured, Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Florida were going to round out the top 4. You can put those guys in pretty much, at least from 2 to 4. You can kind of mix that up however you want. I think Alabama still, because of recruiting and because of the continuity talent-wise, is the favorable number 1. You're going to have to play the best game of your season to beat Alabama. Of course, they have, a relatively easy schedule when you look at this whole thing. So we expect Alabama to be well in hand late in the season to make a run for another SEC championship appearance. Now, we talk about the Georgia Bulldogs. I think they're in very good shape as well. Starting quarterback Jake Fromm is coming back. One thing about him, Jake Fromm is not necessarily a world beater at quarterback, but the offense responds very well when he's in the game. I'm really interested to see George Pickens. George Pickens was actually a recruit out of Alabama, which Georgia was able to snag from Auburn. I really want to see how he's going to fit into the Georgia scheme. I think Georgia is going to be very good on defense once again, and my God, their offensive line is going to be incredible. Did a great job also on the recruiting trail, recruiting offensive linemen as well. Now, the LSU Tigers coming in at number 3, they intrigue me the most. For once in the Ed Orgeron era, you're going to absolutely have a very, very sound offense. I think this is going to be a very good deal for LSU offensively. I think they're in great shape quarterback wise. So they definitely have a nice set of talent in Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is very tough. Joe Burrow's obviously going to be very active in the run-pass option. I think LSU is set up to have a very successful season. Now, we look at the Florida Gators as well, missing a couple of opportunities this past year. I think they played incredible against Georgia. couple of turnovers, especially early in the game, and also lack of execution. I think Dan Mullen had a very good game plan against Georgia offensively, but the lack of execution told on Florida late in that game. But also finishing up very strong with a huge win over Michigan in their bowl game sets them up, at least from a morale standpoint, having a great offseason. Did a great job of recruiting this past recruiting season, and coming into the beginning of the season, taking on the Miami Hurricanes. That would be a huge win for them earlier in the season. I look forward to seeing what the Florida Gators will do this year. You talk about also, coming into this season, the number 5 team that comes up obviously is Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is well on their way to being very successful. Jimbo Fisher is an excellent coach, has a national championship under his belt. The Texas A&M has been an incredible staple to the SEC West. Really look forward also to this year how Texas A&M may be able to shake some things up in the SEC West. Now, in my honest opinion, I think they're about a year or two away from making a serious push. But nonetheless, a very, very good football team in Texas A&M, and they had a chance last year to be a 10-win season, have a 10-win season, but surrendering that loss to Auburn after pretty much having that game well in hand proved to be costly. Now, number 6, you talk about the Auburn Tigers coming into 2019. They come in this poll ranked number 6. Not too many arguments here. There's so many question marks. You talk about the quarterback position that, we really don't know where that particularly is headed. Also, you got a couple of position changes, especially in the secondary. I'm really digging the position change of Christian Tutt and Javaris Davis. One thing about it, I think Javaris Davis is a great asset to the secondary, but he just, in my opinion, just wasn't equipped to do at the nickelback position what Auburn wants that position to be, and that's basically a very physical guy, able to cover pass. You could tell that Javaris Davis was very out of his element. I think Christian Tutt will be a great addition to that particular position. So we look forward to the Advocare Classic with the Auburn Tigers taking on the Oregon Ducks. We will get a very quick litmus test as to where the Auburn Tigers are at that point of the season. Big shout out to the Auburn Tigers and War Eagle. As we move down the list, you look at the Mississippi State Bulldogs, who had a pretty decent season. Tennessee Vols actually had the game, a very important win over Auburn last year, being able to secure their first SEC win in a long time. I think Jeremy Pruitt is well on his way to having some success at Tennessee as well. The Missouri Tigers, who knows where they could go. Kelly Bryant is their quarterback now. I think he adds a different level of athleticism. He's going to be well coached and possibly put Mizzou in a position to where not necessarily at all competing for the SEC West, but putting themselves in a position to be very, very formidable as they have been since their inception in 2012. And also you look at the Carolina Gamecocks. For Carolina, it's time. It's time for Will Muschamp to really prove if he's going to be a sustainable head coach in college football. So far as a head coach, he has not been particularly over the top successful. So now is the year that he has to prove that he has a place as a college football coach. Now that's my roundup of the top 10. I mean, doing the whole list would have been a little bit exhausting, but nonetheless, we're going into this season with a lot of great teams who are going to have the opportunity to take their programs to the next level. All right, guys, go ahead and leave any comment you may have. Like the video. Also, subscribe to Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. But as you see, I do not mind objectively commenting on other football programs in the SEC. Once again, it's K-Stu to go for Vernon Speaks Sports. We're talking Auburn like it's nobody's business. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn, War Eagle.